Hello everybody, I'm Dustin Benzel, and welcome to another Pokemon Reflections. This is part 2 of Generation 1. Now, in the previous episode video, we were talking about the gyms, and we were just getting into the league. So let's just jump into the league, shall we? Now, the league will always be one of my favorites, except the battle with Richie. And I'll explain why, and I think I've addressed this in my 5th gen reflections. I think I mentioned Richie. But before we get into that particular trainer and that particular battle, let's jump into the beginning the league battles. Now, I will give credit where credit is due, and I will say that the league actually gave us some of the best battles within first generation. I can't think of any other battle excluding a Magmar versus Charizard, where there was actually decent battles within first generation. And I'm trying to think there were certain times where Ash battled other trainers, I think. I think there may have been some battling tournaments, maybe, that could have been the case, but most of the time there wasn't really a whole bunch of battles where Ash could win and do very well or whatever. But before I quite get into the league, let me talk about Gary, because I neglected Gary as well as Brock and Misty. Gary really doesn't show up in the Orange Island, so this would be a perfect time to mention Gary. I like how Gary was kind of done. You know, he was kind of like that snooty, arrogant rival that didn't seem to give a crap about Ash and was technically, I guess, jealous of Ash. Like the one moment where Ash saw a sign that said, "Ash sucks, Gary was here," or something of that nature, and Ash was like, "Oh, that Gary," but Gary was an okay rival. Technically, of all the rivals that Ash had, I would definitely say that Gary is definitely second, at least in terms of a rival for Ash, with Paul being number 1, because Paul was definitely one of those, gave Ash something to really work for. But Gary, that wasn't really the case with Gary. Now, I already mentioned the battle in the Silver Conference with Gary beating Ash beating Gary, and then in this particular league, Ash and Gary don't exactly battle each other. In fact, Ash and Gary really didn't have a lot of battles together, actually, now that I think about it. There was a few here and there. There was, I think, Eevee versus Pikachu, and Eevee actually won. And then Gary's Eevee evolved into Umbreon, something of that nature. In second generation. So as in terms of rival for Ash, I definitely say Paul is the better one, because Paul actually battled Ash and pushed Ash, but Gary wasn't bad. In terms of, personality, character, I would definitely say Gary is a little bit better than Paul, because Paul was just plain a jerk. He was plainly just a jerk. That's all Paul was. Gary actually seemed like fun. Gary was a jerk, but he had, a fun attitude doing it. He would, sneer and laugh and stuff and make fun of Ash that way. And he had a very energetic, bubbly personality, even though he was, a jerk. Paul was kind of like a loner, depressive outburst kind of person, where he would insult you, but he would just have this angry look on his face the whole time. So that's where Paul's flaws come in comparison to Gary. So, like I said, Gary, I do think, is the second best rival, and Ash didn't battle Gary very much, and we didn't even get to know Gary's starter Pokemon until the Silver Conference, technically, but whatever the case may have been. So let's jump back into the league. What we had is, the first one was against Mandy. That was Ash's first league battle. And it was against league favorite Mandy. Now, a lot of people might think that Ash beating Mandy was cheap and unfair, even though Mandy was like a league favorite. But I actually have to disagree, and there are many reasons why within the anime at that particular time that was actually pretty well done. Okay, so we all know that Krabby didn't exactly get very much focus, basically. Ash caught it. It appeared in a video phone conversation with Professor Oak. Krabby was there. Gary had a Krabby that was the size of a Kingler, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, it was against it was against Mandy's Executor versus Ash's Krabby. Now, it's kind of funny because Misty is like, don't use Krabby, it's never battled. Well, yeah, what do you think? I don't understand Misty there. I mean, there could be Pokemon that you've caught that you haven't used in terms of battling, but you may want to use just to test out its own battle strengths and skills. You know, so I don't know what Misty was going on about. Ash had other Pokemon, so even if Krabby lost, Ash could have won with those other Pokemon. But anyway, let's talk about the battle. So the reason why I think it was pretty legitimate why it happened was it was due to Mandy's arrogance for one thing, but what happened in the battle is, even though Executor was super effective against Krabby, we have to remember this is the first generation and there weren't a whole lot of moves and abilities to actually benefit anyone, regardless if they have the type advantage or not. But what happened was Krabby used Leer. And if we all know, Leer decreases a Pokemon's defense so that a physical attack, like say Krabby's Stomp, would do especially more damage. Now the thing we also have to consider is Krabby has a very high attack stat, actually. It has a higher attack stat than, say, probably, maybe even Charizard, maybe. I could be wrong, but I really don't know. But actually, it's probably like Kingler. But Krabby has a very high attack stat. It's like 90 or 95 base stat so it's pretty high for an unevolved Pokemon. So not only does Krabby have a very high attack stat, but it used a neutral move against Executor. So that's why it was believable for me that Krabby actually could knock out Executor. Because it's not like it was using Bubble Attack and it won using a Leer attack. And then, after that battle, after Executor loses, that's when Krabby evolves into Kingler. And the reason why Kingler's continued success in winning actually makes sense. I think the next one was against Seadra. Kingler beating Seadra does make some sense because, you know, Kingler is a water type just like Seadra, you know, so yeah. You know, it kind of makes sense. Maybe Mandy's Pokemon were a little bit too defensively weak or whatever, only taking a couple of hits before being knocked out. But at the same time, it's not like Krabby or Kingler really got that much damage, maybe an attack here or there. So that's why I think it is probably one of my favorite battles, just simply because Ash was using Krabby, and then he used, and then it evolved into Kingler, and then Kingler took out Mandy, Seadra, and then Golbat, and even if Ash lost Kingler, he still had Pokemon, so that was amazing. That was one of the coolest battles ever, because Ash only used one Pokemon, and beat a 3-on-3. I want to see that again. I really do. I want to see a random battle tournament where there are 3-on-3 battles, and I want Ash to battle a arrogant, cocky trainer with a Pokemon that doesn't exactly have a lot of battle time or screen time. Even Oshawott could be in this battle. And I want to see that. I want to see that particular Pokemon of Ash's just beating the trainer one after another, and Ash doesn't have to use any other Pokemon. I just want to see that again, because that was really cool. Anyway, the other 2 battles, or 3 battles, or whatever it was, weren't exactly that good, I guess you could say. I mean, we had, Well, I mean, they were okay. I mean, there was the Arcanine and Cloyster trainer, the Fire and Ice battle, and that one was Kingler and I believe it was Pikachu. Yeah. It was Kingler versus Cloyster, and Kingler knocked Cloyster for a loop, just kept using Crab Hammer, but Kingler got destroyed. And then Arcanine beat Kingler, and then Pikachu was used and beat Arcanine, basically. And then we moved into Jeanette, I believe, which was the grass-type trainer or bug-type trainer or something like that. And I think she had Beedrill, Bellsprout, and I think her full name was Jeanette Fisher, at least in the dub. Let's see. I remember Beedrill and Bellsprout, but I can't remember the other one. Beedrill, Bellsprout. It was a 3-on-3 because Ash used Pikachu, Bulbasaur, and Muck. And Muck beat 2 Pokemon, and then it went down to 1 other Pokemon. Let's see, what did Jeanette have? Beedrill, Scyther, and Bellsprout. Now, Jeanette was a pretty interesting trainer. I'm not going to say she was like Katie or even like Macy in the Silver Conference. Katie and Hoenn and Silver, but Jeanette was kind of an interesting trainer. But anyway, it was really nice to see Bulbasaur just taking out 2 of those Pokemon. Taking out Beedrill and Bellsprout, or Beedrill and Scyther, even though Bulbasaur is technically weak against those Pokemon. So it was really kind of interesting to see. And then we have the overpowered Bellsprout. Now that was just funny. I can understand Bellsprout knocking out Bulbasaur, but just to have Pikachu go in there and then have Bellsprout whacking Pikachu with its foot, and then Pikachu loses just for Ash to use Muck was just hilarious. So then Ash beat that. Then we basically get into Richie. Let me put it this way. I don't know what the writers were thinking, but Richie was technically weaker than Ash by far. I don't think anyone could disagree with me this. Richie was not stronger than Ash. The only reason why Ash lost was because of plot. But Richie was always a lesser version of Ash, and it was really, really annoying to see. Especially since he had his own Pikachu, and he had pretty much all the other Pokemon that Ash had. See, there was Richie's Butterfree, and Richie's Charmeleon. Oh, no, wait, he didn't have Charmeleon yet. Actually, I think Richie may have a Charizard now. If those specials of Pokemon are to be believed, but I'm not really sure. I remember he had Charmander. I don't know if he had a Charizard. No, okay, Zippo didn't evolve. Okay, so it was... So, yeah, he had a Charmeleon, or he had a Charmander. He had Pikachu, Butterfree... And that's what it was. It was just a 3-on-3 battle, Ash versus Richie. So yeah, that was a very weird battle. Well, wait, hold on. So yeah, Richie was like a lesser clone. There was like nothing unique about Richie. Whatever, right? Whatever. But anyway, the point is, I really, really disliked that battle between Ash versus Richie. Now, I'm going to make it perfectly clear. I've tried discussing this with other people, but they don't seem to get my point. Apparently, I'm not saying that Ash had to beat Richie and then lose or something like that. I mean, I'm not saying that Ash couldn't get top 16. What I disagree with how the battle actually went down. Let me give you a rundown of what happened during that episode, shall we? Alright, this is why it was the worst end of a league ever. I mean, the only reason why Cameron is worse is because Cameron was a horrible character, as well as having only 5 Pokemon and being a complete moron, which is the only reason why I have a problem with that. But here's why I really did not like Ash versus Richie. Well, let's see. The battle was, the episode began with Richie being all like, hey Ash, we're gonna battle each other, let's just do it, let's battle our hearts out, let's do our best, and Ash agreed. Then we had to have that stupid Team Rocket plot where Ash had to deal with Team Rocket. You know, Ash used his Pokemon to battle Team Rocket. They were tired. Ash used a bicycle pedaling device or whatever, and he pedaled Team Rocket's balloon to the arena. You know, despite the fact that Ash was just about to be disqualified for not being there. And that always bugged me because, you know, he could have been an emergency. Ash could have been kidnapped. You know, to have no one actually wonder where Ash was at this point. Even Delia and Professor Oak didn't really care, you know. Someone could have at least gone to check out and see where Ash was. Or at least wonder where Ash was, because that whole time it was just Ash versus Richie. He was just waiting for Ash to be there. But the thing that really bugged me is how that was not a battle. It was the way that I would describe it is there is a battle frontier within the games in Emerald that would best describe this battle. And I think it's the Battle Palace. And I think Spencer is the Frontier brand for the Battle Palace. Battle Frontier. Okay. Battle Factory. No. Battle Pyramid. Battle Dome. Battle Arena. Battle Pike. Hold on. So we have Battle Tower, Battle Palace. There we go. Okay, the Battle Palace. Okay. Depending on its nature, a Pokemon may use different moves in a Battle Palace. All moves belong to one of the three categories: attack, defense, or support. Blah, 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 blah. Each nature has a set of ratio that... Okay, so basically what I'm saying is within the Battle Palace, the Pokemon themselves battle, and that's what it was against Ash versus Richie. Well, no, let's be a little bit fair. Richie actually did tell his Pokemon to use attacks. What we did not see, however, is Ash command his Pokemon. I've seen that battle a lot of times. Maybe I misremembered again, but I'm very sure that I remember that Ash was quiet. It was Pikachu, use this. Butterfree, use this. Charmander, use this, or whatever. And it was Richie. Richie was doing the whole thing, and then what was going on? It was a very short, rushed battle. It wasn't from the beginning. It showed no skill, no strategy. There was at least some of that in the battle with Cameron. And then there was the whole Charizard disobedience where Charizard would kick Charmander's butt and give it to go away. And then there's the whole Charizard just refusing to battle Pikachu, and Richie's Pikachu, and then it just ends up disqualifying Ash. Now, here's a few problems. A lot of those battle wins that Richie had were not exactly battle wins. Ash used Squirtle during that battle, and the only reason why Squirtle lost was because it lost to Butterfree's Sleep Powder, which means that its battle format was also a lot different than any other format, because sleeping Pokemon aren't necessarily disqualified or having lose. Now, maybe I can accept that due to the fact that it's the anime and they do have creative liberties, and maybe in that instance, being put to sleep counts as a knockout. But at the same time, the whole battle in combination with all its flaws was really horrible, and a horrible way for Ash to lose the Pokemon League. Like I said, I have no problem with Ash losing the league or even getting top 16 during that time. It's just that it should have been with a better trainer like Gary, and it should have actually been a battle. It shouldn't have been a battle that only lasted like 2 minutes, because there was only like 2 minutes left within the actual episode for the battle to take place. So that's pretty much the league. So let's get into Orange Islands, but first let's discuss the end of the Kanto region a little bit before we get into the Orange Islands. Let's say we have the whole palette party panic thing where Charizard goes around, does things. After that, that's when Pidgeotto evolves into Pidgeot, but is released, which I found bullcrap. Actually, let's discuss that real quick. I really didn't like Ash releasing his Butterfree or his Primeape or even his Pidgeot. You know, he could have at least kept one of them. Because Ash, throughout most of first gen, he only had 5 Pokemon. Anyway, when he got into Orange Island, that's when we get into some interesting things. That's when Ash caught Lapras. Again, I wish Ash didn't release Lapras. I wish that Lapras had decided to stay with Ash. And then Ash also caught a Snorlax, which is really cool, even though it wasn't used in the final battle. In fact, Snorlax didn't really get a battle until the sumo wrestling episode in 2nd gen, and it wasn't a real battle until against Claire for the most part. So Ash caught Snorlax, which was really cool and really nice, because Snorlax was a pretty big Pokemon. Snorlax is a pretty big Pokemon. In first generation, it was definitely the biggest Pokemon in the first generation. I don't necessarily mean by height, but definitely by weight. So, yeah. Anyway, like I said, I don't really remember the Orange League very well, or the Orange Island League, or whatever. Drake is the only one that's really notable, because that was the only one that was technically a real battle. Well, there was, I think it was Luana, and she had like Marowak and something, and it was Charizard and Pikachu. But regardless, that's when Charizard started to obey. Charizard was very prominent, very important Pokemon. The rest of the gyms, the Orange Island gyms, weren't exactly real gyms per se, because they didn't battle. They were different type of things. That's when we had Tracy. Tracy was okay for a temporary replacement for Brock. You know, he liked art, he liked Professor Oak, and, you know, Tracy was okay, I guess. But then we get into the battle with Drake. Now, that was a really cool battle. That was a full battle. The first full battle Ash ever had in that entire thing was Ash versus Drake. Which is kind of funny, because Drake's strongest Pokemon was Dragonite, and that's pretty interesting because Drake is an Elite Four in Hoenn. Not the same character, mind you. And Drake is like an old seafaring captain-like person in the Hoenn games, and he's one of the Elite Four, and he also has Dragon type, so that's pretty weird. So anyway, Drake had, if I can remember correctly, let me look real quick. Okay, so Drake had Dragonite, Ditto, Onix, Gengar, and Venusaur, and Electabuzz. And Ash used Pikachu, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Charizard, Tauros, and Lapras during that battle. Now, I'd have to say that was probably the best battle in the entire first generation. Before 2nd generation, definitely Ash versus Drake. That last battle in the first generation in the filler saga, Ash versus Drake, definitely the best. It definitely outpaces even Mandy in the Indigo League, you know. So yeah, we had Ash was doing very well. His Pikachu beat Ditto. Then I believe Drake sent out Onix, and Ash beat Onix with Squirtle. And then Drake sent out Gengar. Ash started off using Tauros, but that was a horrible choice because normal doesn't do any damage to ghost types. So Ash recalled Tauros, then used Lapras, then it ended up in a tie. And then it was Venusaur, I believe. Yes, Venusaur. Venusaur lost to Tauros. Then we had Electabuzz. Electabuzz took out Bulbasaur. And then Charizard was used to beat Electabuzz. And then it was Dragonite. Dragonite took out Charizard. Squirtle, and Tauros, and then it was Pikachu versus Dragonite, and Pikachu wins. And Ash wins the Orange Island League, and he becomes the champion of the Orange Islands. So yeah, that's pretty much it for first generation. Some other notes to mention, I guess you could say, some observations. I would definitely say that first generation did have a lot of funny moments and a lot of humorous moments that probably certain other generations actually lacked. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it was pretty funny. Pretty exciting. For its own particular adaptation of Pokemon, it wasn't too bad. But I definitely like it in the future generations where they actually know what they're doing, what they want, so it actually feels more like an adaptation of what Pokemon should be like. But the anime version, the first generation, seemed like a special adaptation of itself, because there was a lot of mistakes, or at least a lot of game mistakes and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And, there's Brock, Brock was an okay character, I'm not sure if I really care or not, but there is the whole ladies gag that was introduced later on, and it just grew into Brock's character. Misty was an okay traveling companion, she's at least better than Iris, at least. Iris was just, I don't know what Iris was, but no. So yeah, that pretty much covers first generations. There's really nothing I could talk about outside that I hate that Lapras was released. Of all the Pokemon that Ash released in the first generation, I'm most upset about Lapras. Lapras was awesome. Lapras is probably could be considered Ash's technically coolest water types, just simply because of how rare it was back then. Now you can get Lapras any way you want. You just get a Ditto and you can breed Lapras like crazy and you can get a whole crap load of Lapras. But back then, Lapras was probably one of the rarest water types, with the exception of Almanite and Kabuto, because they're fossils. But of the Pokemon that weren't exactly extinct or not fossils, Lapras is definitely rare. You can only get one Lapras within the game, and it was basically a gift Pokemon within the Siliph company thing going on when you were battling Giovanni. I think Gary was there, or no, Blue. Sorry, Blue was there. At least that's what he is in the English localization of the games. So yeah, it was really cool. I really miss Ash's Lapras, I'm actually surprised that Ash got so many water types in the first generation. But I think water type has the most Pokemon of all the generations. It calmed down in 5th generation and 6th generation due to the lack of options, but just thinking about it, there's got to be at least, I don't know, like 80 Pokemon that are water types. Let me just see real quick. There's 124 water types, about 16.8% of all Pokemon. This is counting forms and mega evolutions, apparently, where the evolutions are changed. Yeah, so yeah, it was really nice to see that Ash caught quite a bit, actually. He had Squirtle, he had Krabby, and he had Lapras, Technically, that's pretty much the highest amount of Pokemon that Ash actually had in terms of type. Well, I mean, there's still flying and normal types to consider, especially when it's like a normal flying. But actually, given Halucha's capture, I actually think that Ash has the most flying Pokemon. Let's see. Of all the flying types, regardless if they got released or not, there was Butterfree, there was Pidgeot, there was Charizard, there was Noctowl, there was Swellow, there was Staraptor, Gliscor. Well, anyway, sorry, I'm going to have to say, forget it for now. But, so yeah, anyway, that's first reflections. Like I said, it may have not really been that good, there were some moments that or the Unova region and even second generation are a little bit better in, like, such as gym battles in certain cases. But overall, due to the it being the first generation and the introduction of a lot of things, you know, it actually was pretty decent overall. I am a little disappointed that both Squirtle and Bulbasaur refused to evolve. Well, Squirtle didn't refuse to evolve, it just didn't evolve because it's part of the Squirtle squad. But, you know, I really think Bulbasaur should have evolved into Ivysaur. I think it would have been better for Ash if that actually was the case. Because when Ash went into the league, the only evolved Pokemon he had, fully evolved Pokemon he had, were Muck and Charizard, basically. Every other Pokemon was just unevolved or standalone, basically, like Tauros, you know. So that was kind of that. Okay, so yeah, like I said, this covers first generation. Next, I'm going to probably do a quick reflections of 6th generation so far. But I'm probably, if you see this before the gym battle with Ash versus Clemont, then expect the reflections of 6th gen so far to be after that point, because that is the midway point. After Ash gets his next badge, that's when we will discuss everything, and that's when I will discuss the future. So expect that in the future. I don't know what my next Pokemon video is going to be. It could just be regular discussions of certain aspects, mini discussions of certain things, you know. So I will see you in the next Pokemon video. Thank you, Pokemon fans. I will see you later again. So goodbye.